R. Skinwalker, U. Benesathot Skinwalker. My boyfriend was out back on the patio and told me to bring out his knife, which I did. He said he thought he heard a wounded animal in the woods, so I sat with him and we listened. As we listened, we heard it sounded very off. We were out there an hour prior to this experience, might I add, and we didn't hear this. Before we even thought it was a skinwalker, I mentioned how it sounded like a baby or young child. I also mentioned how it sounded like it was saying, "Hey," or "Help." If you are familiar with the game Zelda, the best way to describe how it sounded like Navi's infamous line, "Hey," it also was moving quickly. It would sound more faint within a few seconds, then sound louder again. If it was wounded animal, it wouldn't have been able to move as quick as it was. We also realized its cries were very spread apart and offbeat. It would anywhere from 5-15 seconds between each cry. If it was a wounded animal, it would be less time between each cry. It sounded so off and felt so off. I felt uneasy while outside, and I don't scared often, but I genuinely did at this time. I didn't even believe in skinwalkers before this. Or skinwalker, U. Catwald. My experience, I'm not sure if this actually was a skinwalker, but one can only assume from what happened to me, and also I live in the Midwest, where I heard multiple stories of them. A few days before it happened, I was on a call with my friend. It was about 12 in the morning, and I heard a loud, high-pitched scream come from her side of the call. I asked her what was that, and she replied with what was what. What do you mean? Did you not hear that? Hear what? The scream? She apparently did not hear the scream at all, despite it coming from her side of the call. I know it wasn't my side, as my dog would have reacted, and it sounded like her audio. She lived almost in the middle of nowhere. A few days later, I was on a call with the same friend. It was around 2 in the morning, and I had made food, so I was eating it downstairs in the kitchen. We decided to end the call as she was getting tired. I was still downstairs in the kitchen on my phone eating rice when I started to hear banging on the back door. In the dining room next to the kitchen, the back door is a glass door. I looked up at the door, and my dog runs up to the door and is freaking out. She's barking, jumping, and her fur is all puffed up. I look at the door, and something is hitting the door. It's staring right at me. It's on all fours. It's white and bony. I immediately grabbed my dog by her collar, and we ran upstairs. The next day, I wake up at around 1 in the afternoon, and I go downstairs. My sister was in the living room. She begins to tell me that a few hours ago, something was banging on the back garage door. We have another back door in the garage to the backyard, and it sounded like it was trying to break the door knob and get in the house. Ever since that night, I've heard more and more tapping, scratching on my window, from inside my closet, the walls, and underneath my bed. Our Skinwalker U. Candy Corn Bish. My current possible SW experience. This is kind of long, sorry. So this is something that I'm still experiencing to this day, like literally as I'm typing this. I'm just gonna start at the beginning. I live in a rural area surrounded by woods, and that's about it. A few years after moving here, me and my father started hearing things in the woods at night. It started off just sounding like an animal until we both heard what sounded like a little girl saying hello. When looking around with my father, no one was found. This continued for years, but never to this extent. A few months ago, I was walking home from taking up the trash. It was around 9 p.m. and dark. As I walked, I could hear something following me in the woods next to me. I assumed it was just a squirrel or something until I heard laughing directly in my ear. Loud. I was unable to run due to a mild leg injury at the time, so I just called my mom as I walked home. Nothing else happened that night. After that, our dogs would start barking like crazy every night at around that same time. Then, starting a few months ago, this thing started trying to imitate our dogs. We always let the dogs in at 7 p.m., and around 9 p.m. the barking would start. The barking in question, though, is very obvious, not natural. It is almost human-like and follows a strict pattern. Bark, 1 second. Bark, bark, 3 seconds. And repeats for about 30 minutes before stopping. Once stopping, There will be taps and scratching on my window for a few minutes before everything stops completely and returns to normal. No one else in my house really cares as much as I do, and I know I'm probably overreacting. There is probably a decent explanation to this, but for now, I'm going to assume it's some sort of SW. RR Real Horror Stories. Independent Tear 2619, The Sniff. A family friend was gone with his family for 2 days. He took great pride in how clean and neat he kept his house. The usually friend who watched their house was unavailable, so the family friend, let's call him Ron, called my dad, and since I wasn't doing anything, he asked if I would do it, and I agreed. I only met Ron twice, but he was a very nice and wealthy guy. I'm a 17-year-old male, so Ron wasn't fully on board with a child watching his house, but didn't have many other choices. Plus, my dad thought this would be a good experience to learn about responsibility. I met up with Ron at his house, and he gave me the rundown and told me not to go upstairs, clean anything I got dirty, and don't break anything. His house was fairly big, with a second floor, main floor, and a basement. Once the tour was over, he gave me the keys and wished me luck. Ron left, and I was alone. My dad said that he would be able to visit in the evening and maybe stay the night if I wanted him to, but I didn't take the offer. When I was alone, it was only 2:30 p.m., so I had some time to kill. I played video games, ate some food, watched TV, and exercised while following all 3 of the simple rules. It was fun, and later that night a pizza showed up. Ron ordered me one. Overall, it was great, till I went to sleep. Once I had gotten ready for bed and turned off all the lights. I got in bed, and 20 minutes later I hear sniffing coming from outside the door. It sounds like a dog. At first I pay no attention to it. I have 4 dogs I've fallen asleep to barking before. However, I realized that Ron has no pets that he mentioned. I text him, "Hey Ron, do you have any pets you forgot to tell me about?" As I waited for a response, I realized he was probably asleep. It was 11:20 p.m. So I decided to see for myself. When I touched the door knob to open the door, the sniffing stopped. I sent a chill down my spine when the room felt so silent. I looked for a weapon and settled it on a yard-tall wooden giraffe, holding it by the neck with its body upwards like a mallet, and I opened the door, turned on all main floor lights, and looked around. After 10 minutes of searching and making sure the door locked so no dogs could have gotten in, both front and back doors were already closed and locked. I saw the basement door was wide open. I was confused on whether or not I left it open. I closed it and went back to bed, again turning off all lights and putting up the wooden giraffe. Once I sat on the bed and almost immediately it started again. This time it was louder, like a bear sniffing. It scared me to my core and I could hardly breathe. I also saw that my phone received a text. Ron said, "No animals are allowed in my house." That answer scared the shit out of me as I heard the sniffing on the door. After a few minutes of hyping myself up, I grabbed the giraffe again and grabbed the doorknob. This time the sniffing didn't stop, which caused me to pause. I pulled the door open a tad and stuck the giraffe's head out. The sniffing stopped, but I still felt like something was there. I threw the giraffe outside the door and closed it. I then thought of a plan. Run out and turn on lights and run back in my room to see the shadow of the thing sniffing. I ran out, and with all my courage, I turned on the light, and my worst fear came true. I heard the sniff right behind me. I dashed into my room and looked under the door. Nothing. I didn't even see the wooden giraffe I threw out there. I decided that I had to man up and just deal with it. I went to sleep. It took me 2 hours with the sniffing, but I went to sleep. I woke up at 10 a.m. and left. I called Ron and I explained the story. He was just as confused as me, but he got another family friend to watch the house. On my way out, however, I saw the staircase and it clicked. That's probably where it was hiding. I did no more digging and left. I still know Ron. We haven't looked into the noises, and I don't know if the family. Friend had the experience. I am glad it's over, though.